people need to kind of go through hardship. You need to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because that's how growth happens. I think it's that sort of comparison, isn't it, between privilege and mindset. Mindset's something that kind of is born out of, distress or tough times, dark times. And I was like, I never want to go hungry again. I never want to be that person where I have to literally scrimp and save just to have a meal.
Dominic Joyce, welcome back to the Purpose-Led Leadership Podcast. You were on my show back in the day in season 1. This is season 4. I'm delighted to have you back on. We've become really close friends over the last few years. We met on LinkedIn. 44,000 followers I think you're up to now on there. For those that don't know you, there's not many people that don't, give us an overview of what you actually do now.
So I guess my main job is a head of talent acquisition for a company in financial services. I guess previously I've been my own boss. So I've ran my own company with career consultancy, CV writing for 4 years. Been working in recruitment 10 years now, pretty much on the nose, and create content around the TA space on LinkedIn. I guess just trying to call out all the BS and break through the noise that you see on there, and just, I think, been quoted saying that I talk about the things that people think about but don't speak about.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I guess, what I do.
Yeah. I mean, I've got to say, I love your content. I love you as a human being, but your content is very forthright, honest. There's humour to it, and there's no wonder you're doing well with that. I want to touch on that first, actually, before we go back into your journey. I want to talk to you a lot about recruitment, but also let's actually start with LinkedIn. For me, the LinkedIn landscape has changed quite a lot over the last 18 months, 2 years. What's good, bad, and ugly about it from your point of view?
I think one thing that's people get so wrapped up in vanity metrics and likes and views without really looking at the sole purpose of what they're doing. So people would talk about, I've had X amount of views on their content, when in reality, all you do is literally copy and paste a motivational quote from Instagram. Which, don't get me wrong, I've copied photos and memes and GIFs elsewhere, made my own, but I've always added kind of context to it.
Yeah.
Or related it to the TA career space. I think as well, a lot of people kind of losing a bit of trust with LinkedIn, I find. I think it's becoming very, choose the words carefully here, I think it's kind of losing its way a little bit in terms of what it does and what it offers.
Yeah.
I think people are kind of becoming a bit disillusioned with the content as well, because of course it's only platform we think about where you don't really generate any income from your content and views. If you look at places like,
right, not directly, right? Yeah.
No. So you look at TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, anything you put out in content wise, it gains tens of thousands of views.
Yeah.
Whereas I think with LinkedIn, it's a case of, well, what's the premise behind it? What's the real benefit to it? I think, in my sense, I think I had 9 million views on my content last year on LinkedIn.
Nice.
Which, perhaps somewhere else wouldn't have paid off the mortgage, but definitely would have given a little bit of cash extra for the daughter. So I think it's a very tough platform, because it's obviously going to be, it's still what you call a monopoly, isn't it?
Yeah.
No one's really going to compete with LinkedIn right now.
No.
Anything that does, they'll probably acquire it.
I mean, I agree with you. I think, speaking personally of myself, I think even myself, I lost my way with it a little bit. I was getting sucked into that thirsty, put a selfie on, kind of like. So over the last month or two, I've deliberately backed away from it and really evaluated what my purpose is. And now I probably only post 3 times a week, whereas I used to post twice a day. But it's about, for me, it's about, is this adding value? I want to add value. Yes, the odd personal post I think is important, but I think it has become a little bit saturated with a selfie and a story. They get the likes, get the validation. But ultimately, what does that actually do for yourself? I think it actually, I think that, for me personally, a case of less is more, and what's the benefit, what's the purpose of me doing it? Ultimately, is to get business. And I think some people, if they're the choice of likes, comment and engagement versus pounds and money, they'll choose the former, because they're so sucked into that kind of, that thing. What do you think?
I agree. I think we've both had this chat before offline, and we've discussed that perhaps posts we put out that have had 10, 20 likes have generated customers and clients. So I'd also agree in the space around, as we call it, thirst trap selfies. Whilst I think a business owner, self-employed, needs to basically elevate the personal brand and tell people who they are, what they do, what their drivers are. Quite often you'll see on there irrelevant selfies backed up by a job post and I think it's a case of, well, what's the benefit to the picture? And what's the benefit, what you're trying to achieve from this? Whereas you definitely see a lot more now, I think, people trying to sell themselves alongside the business idea, because it's the whole cliche, isn't it? People buy people. So I think there's definitely a lot more around, here's me, here's my kids, here's my dog, which I think has a purpose. And I think it's down to, as we discussed before, it's varied content. So you don't want always personal posts, but equally it's like a case after, well, what's this person's angle? What are they really pushing?
So how do you plan your content then? Do you just wake up each day and go, I'm going to post that? Or do you have a bit of a process behind it?
It's bizarre. I'll be totally honest. My content comes to me on the toilet, in the showers, on the tube. I've got on my notes there content that just comes to me if I'm. I think I was once in Bicester and was trying on a t-shirt. It was a 2XL, and I was like, I'm a 2XL, but it literally you'd have to catapult me into it. It was that tight, and I was like, okay, so it's meant to be the right fit, but it's not the right fit. So again, made that comment in a analogous format about company fit. So I always think as well, like, perhaps what do we not talk about in a TA space? What perhaps from the recruitment side do we not call out around things like onboarding, offboarding? That's kind of where it comes from. I think also to get attention, my best performing posts have always had tied to it a meme, a GIF, some kind of photo that's funny.
Personality to it,
yeah, correct. It kind of almost tones down the subject a little bit, or at least provides some kind of comedic value or relation to it, and that's kind of why it performs well.
I want to know more about your history and your journey. I mean, I love the eclectic mix of, you've got knowledge and experience as a talent acquisition specialist, and I'm a big advocate of talent acquisition. I actually think there's a lot of bullshit around people that in recruitment saying talent acquisition specialists are failed recruiters. I think talent acquisition is much harder than archetypal recruitment, and I want to talk to you about that. I want to talk to you about RPO. I want to talk to you about CE writing, all that kind of stuff. Loads about recruitment and your journey, but on your LinkedIn profile, it says you've seen and heard most things in recruitment that would be a bestseller on Amazon or something like that. Give us some examples of sort of the best and worst, or whatever you've seen in recruitment.
Yeah, I think I've just seen a lot of it, again, is down to in past companies, managers, people saying certain things. I've had company owners walk out of interviews or not even attend them because the person that walks in is old.
No way.
So I did a short stint for a company.
Wow.
And we were hiring a videographer, and I put together a shortlist, and the chap came in, and the CEO at the time, and it was his company, but he was, they called a wide boy, and he looked at the person, his words were in a thick Irish accent, I'm not interviewing him, he'll be going out on a gurney before I will. And he literally just walked out of the interview, as he didn't actually attend it, had to conduct it myself.
Wow.
Knowing full well that because how old he looked, didn't want to hire him.
That is a good and a bad example, if you like. But I think you're right. I'm very much of a tip of, a lot of clients and hiring managers have this perception that candidates have a self-entitlement about things. But my gosh, and that of hiring managers that have done stuff like that, or they expect candidates to accept offers 15 grand under what it's always been, or the old archetypal position of, I expect this individual to run through a brick wall for me, and they offer no benefits and no reason to do that. And I think it boggles my mind how hiring managers in some companies think they could hire people based on that kind of approach. What's your view on that? Because I also think that it's the 3 C's. It's the candidate, it's the consultant, and the client. All 3 of those have to be doing the right things in order for recruitment to work.
Yeah, I think you're right there, and it's like nail on the head. I think with the client, it's always this desire from the candidate to stand out, to be different, to get my attention. But then you think, well, what's the client doing in reciprocation to the candidate? Because you get the same tired questions. I did a post the other day that I basically put out quite bluntly, don't ask the same questions to the same candidates, because you're not going to interview the same candidates 3 people at the same time, different backgrounds, different industries.
Yeah.
So I think it's about, we demand a lot from our candidates, but then the reality is that do we deliver to our candidates in terms of creating, a fair interview environment with the right questions? I think it's still very much a case of they're still very archaic and perhaps more legacy based in how they interview.
Yeah.
It's, the cliche of give me time that you've done this, and it's a case of, well, potentially a question that's situational might fit this brief and this candidate, but no one's challenging that in the same manner. No one will challenge job adverts. You look at any job advert now on LinkedIn and question when the last time it was, 1, updated, 2, challenged by a recruiter to say, do you really need this? Is this pertinent to the role? I mean, you see it all the time where it's requirements of degrees or it's 5 years of experience. We know ourselves that tenure doesn't generally guarantee quality.
No.
So, and then candidates too, I think, to summarise, it's a case of, are they putting their best foot forward? And it's always the blame culture of it's the ATS, it's the recruiter. But in reality is, did you write a good enough CV that's compelling? Did you write a cover letter? Did you convey yourself in the right manner to get the attention of recruiters?
Yeah.
So it's kind of, and recruiters too as well. It's a case of, how do we conduct ourselves? Are we delivering feedback when we need to? So it's not recruiters get attacked on LinkedIn because, of course, it's easy to attack a recruiter or a company.
Yeah.
But for recruiters to come on to LinkedIn and say, John Smith, took her offer, then didn't come back for 4 weeks, and then meant to start yesterday, then turned out he's working somewhere else now. You can't really say that because, again, it's reputational damage and just personal branding for yourself as a recruiter. But I agree with you, the 3 kind of C's there all need to work in unison, or at least be open and transparent to change.
I think one of the C's, that the client, I think what they need to understand is that hiring isn't about putting an ad on, writing a JD, getting involved with the recruiter. I think it starts from, and people might laugh at this, values. Are you making your decisions based on your values? It's understanding intrinsically why someone would want to join the business, what's compelling about the business, what's the reason for the role, what sort of criteria, what sort of behaviors and attitudes we want, and then the skills, and then the experience, and then have we got the right onboarding, the right interview process, the right, all that kind of stuff. And then you go to hire. I think some people, they just jump to, we've got a few interview questions, we've got a JD, let's go.
It's also as well, people always talk about culture fit. And that's the worst thing you can do, because basically let's talk about an accountancy team. They're all middle-aged white females. You basically want to know one of those if it's culture fit.
Right.
But no one talks about culture add.
Totally agree.
Or culture blend. And I think that's where the key is there is you want someone to come in with fresh ideas, a fresh approach, a fresh background. Don't just say we want someone from banking. That's a definitive need why you need someone from banking as an accountant. If not, then look beyond that, push the envelope. But I think it's a case of managers try and play it safe as well. When in reality, sometimes that Hail Mary, that outside the box candidate, and self-recruitment sometimes will surprise you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You touched on, and I think I've seen a post of yours that blew up. And I must admit, about a decade ago, or more than a decade ago, about 15 or 20 years ago, I very much looked at job hoppers as people who I was judgmental of them, basically. But I see it completely differently now. And I know you've got a strong opinion on people who judge people who haven't been in a role for a particular amount of time. And looking at your profile yourself, may I say, you've moved around a lot.
Yeah.
I see that as a strength generally. What's your rebuttal if someone says, why is it a strength? He hasn't stayed the course. He's been 6 months here, a couple of years here. There must be something wrong with him or her.
It's always the case, isn't it, that you look at the candidate as the issue. And sometimes you're right. But sometimes, like anything, you're sold an opportunity.
Yeah.
You're sold a role. And sometimes, unfortunately, that does not portray what's on the tin. So you'll come in there and you'll see behaviors, conduct, a process that perhaps isn't in line with your ethics, your morals.
Yeah.
Sometimes also as well, you come to a company where you just find that it literally is chalk and cheese. And sometimes your way of recruiting or how you behave doesn't align. Equally as well, you perhaps promise certain things, certain outcomes where it doesn't align to anything that you want out of that career.
I agree with that. I think also it takes a strength for somebody to say, actually, this business isn't working for me. But also, if you've got experience of 5 or 6 different environments and processes and people and visions and values, whatever it is, that can really be beneficial as opposed to, oh, this guy's worked in the same industry for 2 different people. We got to get him on board because he must be. But how's that going to enhance what you've already got? It's not going to enhance it. It's going to maintain it at best.
Yeah, it's about showing the value, isn't it? As well, that despite being there for 9 months, I achieved this. But I think once again, I put a post out the other day around the region beta paradox. So people often will be submersed in environments that are they're uncomfortable, but they're not massively uncomfortable. Right. They're bearable. So you will coast through your job. You won't be too challenged, but you won't be too overwhelmed. But is that really what you want? And I think I did a lot of soul searching in my early career, and I thought what my mum told me as well, and friends told me, and I just thought, well, I don't want to settle for mediocre. And then it's how long do you sit there and wait for that to become special or that to progress? And unfortunately, in the current climate, as candidates, we're afforded the opportunity to go and look at the market more intrinsically, more effectively, at the touch of a phone. You can sit on the toilet, and a job that you hate, crying your eyes out on the toilet while scrolling through LinkedIn, applying to jobs. 20 years ago, you had to stick it out or not go or trawl for the papers and post off CVs.
On the CV point, you've got a hell of a lot of experience of CVs. You've been doing it for a number of years. What makes a good CV? What makes a bad CV? And do you think the CV itself is dying or will die soon?
So, on the CV front, I think Stephen Bartlett put a comment out that your social media is now your CV.
I saw that.
And your CV's dead. Perhaps don't agree with that. I think, once again, social media itself has its dark sides and portrays perhaps things like hustle culture and just, you wear a lot of faces, and what's on social media is not perhaps what's going on in real life.
Totally.
So I'd obviously challenge that in itself there. And the question obviously is then, well, what will, in essence, usurp a CV? Because Da Vinci created the first CV, I think, over 500 years ago nearly now. So in that time, it's evolved slightly, but what's changed from it, or how is it going to be different in 5-10 years' time? You can look at video content, but you have extroverts, introverts. So my question to anyone would be, right, okay, so CV's crap, they don't work, but then what's the alternative that not just works for you, but for everybody else, that creates a level playing field? So can you require video CV, or your extroverts are like, this is a bit of me?
Absolutely right.
Yeah, a bit more perhaps along the lines of being more meticulous, more methodical. Your introverts might be like, this is my time to shine. So with CV, it's basically a blank canvas for you to sit there and portray what it is you do, what makes you different from everybody else, because most roles, you're not one of a kind.
So you're saying it's actually more inclusive to have the CV as opposed to if you're forced or asked to do a video thing, then you're you might be deselecting people who haven't got that confidence to do the video.
Also, as well, if you're looking to work as a TV reporter, 100% you need to have a video CV.
Of course.
But if you're looking to hire a graphic designer or a full stack developer and making them submit a video CV as to why they're good at what they do, also most people really struggle in person to talk about why they're good at what they do and what their drivers are, why they're unique. So ask them to put them on the spot to record it, and also, constrict it to 2 minutes or 3 minutes. They'll spend hours trying to perfect that perfect, monologue of themselves, and they'll lose interest. So I think, what makes a good CV? It's got to be clear and concise. It's got to basically paint you in a picture where there's no doubt that you are the best person at what you do in your field. And that's not arrogance. That's just self-confidence. That's believing in you. Bad CVs, again, the problem is it's subjective. A CV is subjective because you can put on there pictures, colors, formats. In a certain industry, like, marketing, it may stand out, but, legal, you want to keep it to the brief. So I think it's a case of, in the first 6-7 seconds,
totally
is a cliche, but, if I can't tell what you do in the first, say, 10 seconds,
it's true though.
And let's look at the market right now in general since COVID. Like, there's been candidate shortages, quiet quitting, this and that. But, we posted the role the other day in our company for a TA partner, and in 72 hours, 180 CVs.
Wow.
So, and to be fair, I'd say 80% were TA partners. So again, it's standing out, isn't it?
And I think it's about trying to explain what a recruiter does, because a candidate hearing the fact that most recruiters look at CVs within the first 11 seconds and make a judgment, I think we do. And I think that part of the reason for that is that we become skilled at it, and we have to make those decisions quite quickly, don't we? But how would you justify that to a candidate who says, "Well, you're not doing me a service here. You're making a decision based on the look and feel of my CV, basically in 6 seconds." Isn't that unfair?
Unfair in the sense, if I had one CV to one job, I'd probably look at it longer. But then I'd probably say as well, that if in 10 seconds I can't see that you work in, say, the TA space for a TA role, which requires an experienced TA,
you can tell quite quickly.
What will I need to read on beyond 10 seconds for? So one thing I'd say is, look, read the JD, because if you feel that you fit the brief, the problem you get is that everyone has this one-size-fits-all CV.
You can tailor it, is what you're saying.
Yeah. No one tailors a CV. Like you can see now, and it's cover letter. Like, yourself, you've recruited enough people in your own team and your businesses. You can smell a generic cover letter a mile off.
Yeah.
And same, LinkedIn have got this new feature now where if you apply to a role, you can then send an AI-generated follow-up email. Or email to the recruiter saying, "Hey, saw this job," and it basically pre-populates your profile saying, "I feel I fit the role because I've got X, Y, Z, and let's have a chat." But you can just tell, like a recruiters get slated for their copy and paste emails to candidates, it's now flipped to candidates doing it to recruiters now. So my argument is, well, if you've done that and we were slated for doing it ourselves, then by you doing it as a candidate, surely you're no better than the recruiters that are slated for doing it themselves. So I think, no, in that sense, it's a case of, my goal is to put the best person forward for the job, and recruiters want to help you. Like, my goal is to fill that role. I want to get someone in that role that's good. I don't take pride from hitting the reject button on somebody. Unless, of course, you work at Morrison's Fish Counter and you're applying to a head of IT.
Which does happen.
Great to have ambition, but it's been ambitious and it's been audacious. So for me, I want people to get the job. But equally as well, recruiters also are on your side, believe it or not. We have to go to our stakeholders with 4 or 5 CVs and say, "Chris, you wanted this role filled. You gave me the criteria of these 5 things. Here are 5 CVs that I know meet your brief," because that's my reputation there. That's my credibility as a recruiter. If I mess up that shortlist, I lose trust in the management team. I lose trust from my candidates. So we're basically matchmakers in the middle here. Even though we're employed by the company internally, I'm here to support you and help you, but help me to help you.
Fascinating. I want to delve a bit more into recruitment. One more question about recruitment, then we want to talk about you as a human being, mate, as well.
Sure.
Talent acquisition versus recruitment itself. Dispel the myth that talent acquisition is just washed up recruiters or failed recruiters versus, you've done a couple of 2 or 3 TA roles. You've also done normal recruitment, right? So
sure.
What's the difference?
I think I always find when I went to an agency, majority of it was more reactive, because you literally will fish for the roles that come out there and then. And whilst you sort of will pipeline candidates and so forth, it's very reactive. Also as well, you would have to basically manage multiple stakeholders in multiple companies. So, and
I agree.
In all honesty, we've all been there, I'll admit it too as well. I had a lot of roles with a lot of companies. If one I could tell was paying less or didn't suit my needs, I would then not prioritize it. And guess what? Because I wasn't basically employed by the company, they wouldn't come sit at my desk and go, "Done with my CVs."
No.
They would just move on to another agency. So I think also in agency, it's easier to hide if you don't want to do the work, but equally it's hard to get the work. So it's a case of, you have to basically make sure each candidate is literally nailed on and is perfect. And it's a harder graft. It basically, it's hard to kind of cut into that. It's hard to move into internal recruitment from agency, because again, it's the whole impression about you just sling CVs at shortlists. But
I think with talent acquisition, you have to manage up, down, sideways. You've got the demands of the hiring manager, haven't you? You've got the budgets. You've got to deal with. You've still got to deal with the candidates a little bit as well, and the agencies. I think you've got more sophisticated plates to spin. Actually,
it's everything. TA now get involved in things around recruitment marketing, the L&D strategy, onboarding. They look at the actual attraction piece, the retention piece. Stakeholder engagement, training. The amount of managers that need training on just the process and how to basically screen a candidate interview. And also, like I mentioned earlier, if you're given a role by a manager, you need that shortlist by that timescale. You can't go and hide from that. So in essence, you're required to deliver more frequently within more probably tighter timescales internally than you are externally.
I agree. So let's hear a bit more about you then, mate. Paint us a picture of your journey since school to now, please.
Since school?
You remember that far back?
It's 20 years now. So over half my life, and I drive past my school quite a lot, and I just think I want to shout out the window to the kids there. You don't know how lucky you kids have got it. It's a breeze, 9 till 3. I was smart at school. I think I had a lot of anger issues supposedly, don't see it now. I'm generally now the most laid back person. I'm blunt and sarcastic as they come, but I'm pretty laid back. So school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I think followed the trend of people that had no idea what the goal was. I stayed at sixth form and just hated it.
Right.
Went to work full time over Christmas, and that was it. I was like, I like money. And I think someone said, if you either earn or learn, if you can do both, great. If you can't do both, get out. Wasn't really learning at school, anything that I saw benefit in. So yeah, worked in retail. I think everyone, that's coming through that sort of 16 to 20 gap, whether you're full time or university, you'll do jobs in retail, hospitality, leisure. So cut my teeth doing that. I was always pretty good at people and always able to kind of articulate my points and get across, to kind of sell, upsell, cross sell. But I think, my mum died when I was 19 and never really had a father figure growing up. Just mum had different boyfriends at different points in my life, but there was never kind of a role model to kind of aspire to or to look up to. My mum, for all her faults, ran her own ironing company and cleaning company, which of course was, trying to support two teenage boys, was admirable.
Yeah.
Whilst being an alcoholic as well, but that's not kind of the, whilst it's admirable with the graph that she put in, it's kind of not where you want to put yourself as a role model.
Was she an alcoholic throughout your childhood then?
Pretty much. I think, looking back now as a child, you didn't really know any different. And it was, if you go to supermarkets now, there's big bottles of vodka that you buy would neck it one a day.
Right.
And see, to me, that's putting us to sleep and, probably a dirty hangover the next day. But to her, just kept her level. And she'd drive the car, she would go to work still, would still function with it, which is the most scariest thing.
So how did not having a father and really a functioning mother really affect you? And how has it affected you now?
I think not having a father, whilst mum did like most of like the dad duties, like footballs on Sunday and just, still played her part, definitely made me, I think, a better dad.
Right.
Because my daughter's 5 now. I probably, despite the hours that I work that are crazy and just sometimes, unsociable, I still try and make time for my daughter, and she's, it's definitely through lack of not having that father-daughter or father-son relationship has made me, in my opinion, a really engaged and caring parent.
I find that really interesting. I can relate to that myself. My mum left me when I was 2. My father wasn't really around either. And it forced me to feel, and I felt the rejection, the unworthiness, the abandonment. And I think I said to myself, I'd never want to put my own children through that. So I kind of learned how not to parent.
Yeah.
Would you say that's similar to you?
Exactly, yeah. I think you can't miss what you never had, but you can know what you've missed. So, my daughter will never go out. She won't be spoiled, but she'll never go about. She'll never know what it is to want in terms of that way.
Yeah. But has that affected your mental health in any way, your well-being? Have you any, what can you remember any particular times when you felt like giving up or darkness, that kind of stuff going on?
Myself, no. I think my problem is that I do compartmentalize a lot of my emotions. I think losing your parent and your sole parent at 19 and then becoming guardian to your brother who's 17, it's kind of like a slap in the face and a wake-up call, and you don't generally get much time to really sit there with and to really deal with what's going on. You just carry on. And I think that's why now, I think looking back, and I still probably haven't grieved for my mum's passing, which has been 18 years in November, but yeah, it's a really funny one in the way that I think I'm the sort of person where I mask my emotions with humour and comedy, because I don't like those conversations around how I'm feeling. And it's always that prerequisite of how you're feeling. It's like, I'm fine, but how are you? So
yeah, of course.
And I think, it's been times when I've had a few wobbles here and there, but I think just generally, I always think losing a parent at 19 and being your brother's guardian, at that age, nothing generally, apart from anything happened to my daughter, could ever be that harrowing or impactful. It's really going to make me kind of question my mental state, which sounds really weird, but
It doesn't actually. How did she die?
it was a weird one. So she got really, really ill one day, and she collapsed at home and went to hospital. And I remember going to see her. I think she was diagnosed with bowel cancer as well, but that wasn't what killed her.
Right.
Went to go and see the hospital, and I think the last time she said to me, I went to bend over to give her a kiss goodbye and let on her stomach, and she was like, "Oh, you know that really hurts, Dominic. Don't do that." And that was the last word she said to me, was that.
Mm-hmm.
And over the night, I think she choked on her own vomit, and then it went downhill from there. And then next day, went and saw her, and she was literally just comatose, just tubes all down her. And you didn't get a chance to probably say goodbye to your mum. So one of those ones where it was sudden, it was quick, and it just, it was quite raw.
So do you feel then that it's kind of with you, if it's not broke, don't try and fix it, as in you don't feel, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, you don't feel a requirement to go back, process all that kind of stuff, grieve out and move forward? You feel you're coping out as you want to cope? Because there's people say you got to process it before you can move, you got to go back before you go forward, all that kind of. What's your view on all that kind of stuff?
I think when she passed away, there was definitely sort of a hole or a gap in my heart. As cheesy as it sounds, I think my daughter's filled that. I think,
of course,
looking back, I always had something missing, for years and years and years. And I think, I moved to London off the back of that, and
right.
I thought in London everyone will come see me, or my mates will. No one came. Looking back, I probably was depressed then, because I worked in different gyms, in gym sales, and then I actually walked out of a job. Worked at LA Fitness, and hated that much that I literally walked out of there and had no money, no job. And I remember walking towards Blockbuster Video when it was open, with a suitcase with my Xbox in there,
right,
all my games, all my DVDs, and trading that in for, I think, 350 quid to last me,
right,
with no job to go to. And I remember getting another job, and having to literally have Smart Price frozen vegetables, pasta, and Smart Price tomato sauce for like 2 weeks to keep me going, 1 meal a day, until I got paid. So that's why I'm always tell people, look, your mental health is obviously important, but always value kind of like your ability to kind of still survive off that. So I guess in a way you're right, that did impact mental health in a way that it was a struggle.
I mean, I've been very poor, I've been very rich, I've been in between. I've been in situations where I can't afford to eat, loads of stuff, homeless, blah, blah. But I think sometimes in those situations they're very dark and they're very difficult to manage. But I feel that's where without sounding too cheesy myself, that is where the real growth happens. Is a bit of a test, isn't it? It's how you come through that. Yeah,
I think people need to kind of go through hardship. People need to kind of go through that whole, you need to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because that's how growth happens. I think it's that sort of comparison, isn't it, between privilege and mindset.
Yeah, right.
People that are given privilege, obviously often squander it. Those that are given or generate a mindset generally are a lot more successful than those with privilege.
Yes.
Equally as well, if you combine both of them, it's a powerful entity. But mindset is something that kind of is born out of distress or tough times, dark times, and I was like, I never want to go hungry again. I never want to be that person where I have to literally scrimp and save just to have a meal. And I think that's put me to where I am now.
So looking back on your life now, how would you assess your progress, your success?
I think for someone who's nearly 37, who left school at 16, for the best part of 10 years till 26, sample, as I called it, the jobs buffet, different jobs, different companies. I think subconsciously I took with me things that I enjoyed in those jobs, things that I didn't enjoy on my CV from early years. There's a lot of companies that I left off of there that I literally went in there, and it wasn't down to me not having that sticking power. It was just, I knew straight away the environment was not one for me. I worked at a business mobiles company in Hanger Lane for 3 weeks. Not on the CV. It was the most toxic company I've ever seen in my life. And I think you have to almost, again, sample different companies and environments. If you're in one firm for 10 years, how do you compare a toxic environment? Whereas if you've been out there and sampled different companies, how they conduct themselves,
Absolutely.
that's, so I think that's kind of where it's drawn to today. But
So I get the sense, no real counselling, no real therapy. You know, your mum dying. How did you cope? I mean, a lot of people turn to drink and drugs. Did you have any of that going on?
no, things I've never smoked, never done drugs. Drinking, I did the whole teenage, out with the lads. But
Yeah.
I mean, if I was told tomorrow that I couldn't drink the rest of my life, it wouldn't bother me.
Okay. Yeah.
So I guess I didn't seek any sort of comfort in any sort of substances. Mine was more of a sort of a flight or fight response. I think, I lived in a nice part of Berkshire, inherited a council house of my mum, and had I stayed there by now, would have probably been mine. I would have probably paid it off at 36 and been worth easily 300-400k.
Right.
But being 19, naive, it was the flight or fight response. I was like, you need to get out of here. It's all too, the memories are too, heads are too.
Of course.
I ran to London, opportunities and so forth. But, 36-year-old me would have told 19-year-old me, just, there's memories here for a reason, stick at it, don't run away, because in running away, you kind of push people away. And I think for a while I was quite alone. And I think and I think that's why now I prefer my own company.
Yeah.
And I'm happy being alone. People confuse being alone with being lonely.
I see. Yeah, I agree. I'm the same. I think that, not to judge anybody, but some people, they can't function. They can't sit there on their own. And I think it's important to do that. On that point, I want to talk about relationships. I want to talk about how what's happened to you has affected your relationship. But how would you describe your relationship with yourself? How has that changed, if at all?
Over the last few years, it's gotten better. I think I definitely sought solace and comfort perhaps in food rather than drugs. So, I went through a big weight loss at the back end of senior school, and then death of my mother just piled back on again. Right. I'm a sort of person where, I look at a burger and put on weight, so my attitude towards food was poor.
Yeah.
And I think, and that didn't help in terms of, I think, just relationships too as well with people. I think, you know yourself, when you look and feel good, you give a better version of yourself.
Yeah.
And I kind of resent how I didn't take care of myself for so long in terms of my own body. And I think that also affected myself mentally. Last year was really unwell, and I had gout, I had an inflamed liver, and I think my metabolic age was like 55.
No way,
35.
Right.
And I was like, well, my daughter's 5, like 4 or 5. I was like, this is not fair on her as well. I'm not doing the best for her, and that's me being selfish. So I think health-wise too, like I've gone on a massive weight loss journey as well, and I'm still a big lad, but going in the right direction.
Yeah.
But I think by taking care of my own physical health, it's improved my mental health, which in turn improved my career.
Totally agree with that. You mentioned your daughter 3 or 4 times. I mean, personally, I do believe my children have saved me in terms of giving me a purpose and kind of grounded me and all that kind of stuff. I want to talk about your relationship with your daughter. How has that changed you as a man?
I think I'm a lot more patient now. I think I'm a lot more understanding. I think also I always wanted results quicker. So my daughter, she's got SPD, which means sensory processing disorder. It's not autism, but it's basically where she'll take a long time to pick up things like speech, just general motor skills, and her emotions. So I think that's helped me become a lot more patient with just life in general and how I deal with people, because on the surface she's perfectly normal, but she's trying to process things all the time around texture, smell, sounds, and everything. And it's just, I think as a father, you also become a lot more. You see the world in a different way as well. The things that you wouldn't perhaps notice that you do now as a parent. So for me, I just learned to exercise more patience, more understanding with just not just her, but with people. I think I my nature, I'm quite a blunt, direct person by nature. But I think in having a child, I've definitely become a lot more. I'll step back, assess situation, and be more proactive than reactive to things that happen.
Do you still see your brother?
Yeah, so he's, we had a falling out. I think, he went the way that I didn't when my mum passed away. He went to the drink and drug side.
Okay.
Which, and yeah, I think I kicked him out of the house at 17, 18 because he was just literally was wasting his life. And at the time, of course, that was a reactive thing to do. I should have been more supportive, but you know, in essence, it kind of made him become a man because he's now got a really good job. He's got a wife, and he's made a great career of himself as someone who literally, like me, lost a parent early in his life.
And what about, you're married, aren't you? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
separated, but yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So talk to us about going back to, you're 37 years old. I think that age is pretty much you're in your prime. I'd say. What do you want to achieve in the next period of your life?
So the 5-year plan is basically just to have overall just health to start with, because I think my biggest fear is not being there for my daughter when she grows up. Right. I think I look back over, my mum never saw her granddaughter. She never saw me have a career. Like, I wanted to be a police officer when I was younger, which, an architect first and a police officer. So I think for me, and the cliche, health is wealth, but
yeah, it's true.
Take care of myself first. I want to continue what I'm doing in the TA space and the content space, just basically carving out more, of an audience to kind of promote and just understand.
Yeah.
Because again, you know yourself, there's a lot of, it's like an echo chamber and a smorgasbord of shit about people talk about careers advice on there, and
oh god,
right. Everyone's a career coach now because they literally watched one video by somebody else, or or it's don't put the green banner up on LinkedIn, do put it up. And so I think my goal is to kind of continue growing that and dispelling myths, but still for myself, still be a good parent to my daughter. Have a career that I can be proud of, I think. And also I think I want my daughter to look back and be like, I had a good childhood. My dad worked hard, but he still had quality time with me.
Yeah.
I think having kids also makes you realign. And you always hear those stories about parents that are sort of 60 odd now that say the biggest regret I ever had was working too much.
Yes.
And not seeing my kids enough. So I want the next sort of, if I was to strike up that balance of being successful in work, but equally as well being the best dad that I can to my daughter. And I want people, as in a non-arrogant way, when people hear my name, that they smile. There's no wincing. There's no like, oh, it's, my name will always put a smile on someone's face because of what I've done, how I've conducted myself, things that I've said, things that I've done. And even like now, the content that I put out, I always get an email saying, you made me laugh today, or, it resonates with me. I think just continue to do that. But the goal of a bigger audience, like I always say, I want to do a TED Talk. Okay. I'm writing a book right now as well that I want to release that.
Oh, wow. Is that on recruitment or?
The book's basically, it's about the analogous behavior of people in relationships and in careers, because, paradoxically, they are very, very similar. Like if you look at, interviews like dates, people stay in relationships too long because it's comfortable. Same with jobs.
Absolutely.
I think, so the premise of the book is to kind of help people, signpost and realize when they're stuck in like this career comfortable complacency.
Too afraid to leave the career, too afraid to leave relationship.
Correct. So the idea is to kind of help them take charge of their careers.
Right.
If it results in people then leaving their partners, I don't want to be cited in divorce proceedings as my book's the reason why they left their partner. But if it helps someone get out of their own way and in their career and in their relationships, then why not?
Having that courage to kind of set those boundaries. And I think that I've got friends that have been in one company for 20 years and they look at me as the risk taker because I've been an entrepreneur. I've bought and sold businesses. I've won and lost businesses. But I see my friends like that as, I think it's more risky to stay in one particular role or one particular, not relationship necessarily, because you only get one life. But everyone's got their own opinion, haven't they?
You almost find nowadays, though, that it's almost a similar kind of view on people that stay in companies 10, 20 years as is the job hoppers. Well, this person stayed in their company 10 years. What's really advanced in their company 10 years or in their role in 10 years or how they moved about to kind of really show the value? Whereas, I've worked in banking, fintech, e-commerce, payments, foreign currency, all in 5 years. So I'd argue that I understand all these industries now. I worked as a senior recruiter, now head of TA. So in 5 years, people will see it as job hoppy. you can see it's what you want to, but I see that's progression there because I started at that point on that salary. I'm now on a higher point, a higher salary with a bigger network following. I would argue more credibility about what I say and how I post it. And no one's really ever questioned now why I job hop, because they can see the projection. It's not a case of just doing a different company, different role, and transcending, is it?
Okay, so from that other perspective, where we're saying a client needs to understand what makes a good candidate. For you, what makes a good client? Why have you joined your last couple of clients? What do you tend to look for in your own process?
So where I work now, they're very, very open to suggestions, market intel. Where I work now, you can bring the market intel on a role and say, what you pitched here is 10K shy of the market average.
Yeah.
And they'll listen to it and they'll go away and they'll action it. And they're, it's either that or they say, right, okay, so perhaps we want ahead of what we're paying to more of a senior manager. So I think it's a case of, they trust, like the company I joined now was a year ago, had 5 people in TA.
Yeah.
It's now got 15. Yeah. But these, they're some of the best recruiters that I've worked with, some of the best hires that I've made. And they provide credibility. So I think the people that you hire in your TA team are the ones that kind of really make or break how your managers perceive you and clients, because they add credibility in how they conduct themselves, what they say, what they bring to the table in terms of market intel, advice, pushing back in a way that's constructive, not defensive. And that's kind of where I think, I've always found that managers will always push back based on what they know. But what they generally know is the world that they live in, not the world of recruitment, and how we base it. And also it's understanding, like you said earlier, what do recruiters do? Well, don't just take your job and put it on LinkedIn and hope for the best.
No,
we do recruitment marketing, we do outreach, we pipeline, we market map, all these things that go on behind the scenes that you don't see. To basically become a good recruiter, to then know that your role is paying 5K less, or the role that you're advertising for, 2 competitors are paying 10 grand more than you. That's the difference.
I always say when I've interviewed tens of thousands of people in my 25 years in different guises, I always, it's the questions they ask and the responses that they give me. But for me, I think you can tell more by someone's questions as an interviewee than their answers sometimes, right? Someone who's asking the right questions is really important. What do you think? What advice could you give to candidates out there struggling to find roles or whatever?
Yeah, I think I did a post about it last week as well. So probably when this comes out, about mid-August.
Yeah.
And I put on there questions to ask people.
Oh, brilliant. Right.
And it's things around ESG, CSR. So, things around, things that are pertinent to you as a candidate. So I think, we've all been now ourselves recruiters.
Yeah.
When you interview someone, I think it's also set the agenda at the start and say, right, how long will I have to ask you questions? Because you find often that you get like a 5-minute sort of like
at the end,
window where you've got to cram in everything you say. You want to make sure that what you ask is concise. But then you don't really get the chance to really perform. So I think just set the agenda from the off and just go, right, we're here for an hour now. How long will I have to ask you questions? Puts on the back foot a little bit, but equally as well, you then take back control, because there's so much submissive behaviour by candidates about, I hope they like me, when in reality it's a case of, well, no, I'm here to see if they're worth my time as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think bringing the right questions about what you want to know around values, the mission statement, and I'd always argue that put it back on them, because the idea is they want to see you squirm. If they can't answer what their ESG is or the CSR is, how, one, as a firm, do they communicate with their staff and employees? How engaged are they, and how do they understand the mission statement? If they can't answer that as a senior manager, to me as a recruiter, as a candidate, that's alarm bells.
It's about trying not to put them too much on a pedestal and realizing, or having the mentality or mindset that they need you as much as you need them, kind of thing. Because that should be the case anyway. It should almost be a two-way street. Like, to the point where I've done posts where I've been shot down, where people say you can't expect a candidate to interview a client that much. Of course you can, but I think there's a fine line to it, right? But I think candidates should be able to ask questions as much as they like, really, to an extent.
But again, it's back to the dating side of it, isn't it? Like, if you're going to go on a date, you want to make sure, of course, that you're not sat there with your partner, potential partner there, just sat there firing questions at you. You want to be like, well, no, I want to make sure that you're going to be a good partner to me. So I need to sit there and probe and understand, without being rude, what you bring to the table, because you're sat there asking me what I bring. Well, it's again, it's so analogous, isn't it?
Yeah. And then you realise 6 months later what they're like. But if you ask questions on the interview,
this is it. This is why, myself, look, in hindsight, I should have asked more probing, better questions in these
It's the
previous
same.
roles.
I think you saw my post today actually about the job brief. If you're not asking, you're not qualifying the job brief, then it's your fault. You can't moan if you haven't got a decent candidate to find because the job brief shit.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. So it's challenging the status quo, not just going with what's there as uniform, and just being and actually asking the right questions.
We're coming very close to the end. I mean, I wish we had actually had more time. I mean, what pisses you off about the recruitment sector?
I think a lot of people do a lot of moaning on posts and content, but don't provide a lot of solutions.
So true.
I think a lot of people just, again, do it for the whole point of let's put a post out about recruitment to gain likes and invoke a conversation to then generate views. But I think it's what's been done about it. And it's, if you're going to moan about something, you moan about onboarding, provide a solution, say, right, here's what I think should be done. I think recruitment as a whole is that, I think I did a post here a while back now about different types of recruiters and what our remit is. It was like RPO, MSP, internal agency. The amount I didn't know what we did as well was shocking, and that was one of the best performing posts.
Yeah, right.
Might have helped with the Spider-Man meme as well there. That could have helped too, to kind of, again, but I think what's wrong with recruitment right now is, again, it's also the training. It's why do you want to get into recruitment? Because anyone can literally fall out of college, fall out of university, just get kicked into a suit and tie, put on the phone to make calls and just bash KPIs without a purpose. And ultimately, it's any job you want to do there, find out what's your why in recruitment. If you can't answer that, don't do it. Because again, you're literally affecting people's lives and careers here by just acting in a nonchalant, lackadaisical manner.
Brilliant. So as a final kind of question, what would you like to leave the audience with in terms of any piece of advice, anything recruitment related or life related, really?
Yeah, I just think, over the last couple of years, I've done a lot of soul searching too as well. I spent a lot of time alone with myself and working on what I wanted out of life and what made me happy. I think, just as cliche as it sounds, you're on this planet once, Don't settle for mediocrity. Don't settle for okay. People deserve to be happy, whether that's in your careers, in your relationships. And if you are content with just having, a mediocre life, good for you. But I guarantee you now, a lot of people now are listening to this podcast, waking up next to a partner they don't want to be with anymore, going to a job they don't want to be in right now because it's not really serving them any value or purpose. So I'd say that, and change is the biggest fear of all, isn't it? People always fear change. So I think just to sort of leave that there is that, life's too short to be miserable. So if it makes you happy to go and work somewhere else or be with someone else, do it.
On that note, absolutely delighted to have you on. You're a great guy, and I can't wait to see what's next for you. Thanks for coming on the show, mate.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.